Hi, my name is Elmarie Wood, and I'm excited to be here with my friends today to talk about African Americans in horror. This is going to be an exciting conversation because when I say I'm here with my friends, I truly mean that. I've enjoyed talking with each of these folks, so I can't wait to have this conversation. So before we jump in, can we get started with introductions? Linda, you're first on my screen. Can you introduce yourself?
I sure can. I am Linda D. Addison. I write a lot of horror poetry and short stories. I've won awards in horror, and I'm delighted to be here with my buddies.
Great.
Yay.
RJ, you're next.
I am Rhonda Jackson Garcia, aka RJ Joseph, and I am a creative and academic writer. I mostly write about the intersections of race and gender in the horror genre and the romance genre and in pop culture in general. And I write a lot of stuff.
Wrath James White, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Wrath James White. I write horror, short story, poems, novels. I tend to write the more graphic, more visceral, more extreme stuff. I also do write poetry. So that's about all there is. I'm also the founder of KillerCon for those who might be interested.
Don't leave that out. Stephen, you're next.
Hello there, Stephen Van Patten. A lot of that stuff that applies to my esteemed colleagues here on the panel applies. I don't really do a lot of poetry, but I do a lot of the other stuff. And I probably drink a little more tequila than the rest of you. So that's me in a nutshell.
Ooh, I don't know about that, Steve.
Yeah, I would say, how do you know
Oh,
that?
come on. We got to put that to the test next con, just saying.
I
I'm sorry. I said I felt I going into this, I was like, you know what? I really shouldn't be, the instigator, but we'll see what happens.
It's what? Come on. We would all wonder what's happening if you didn't do that. Paula, you're next.
Hello everybody. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Paula D. Ash. I am a writer of horror fiction. Most notably the short story collection We Are Here to Hurt Each Other. It's won some awards. And I also teach. I'm an educator. And like pretty much everybody else here, I write a whole lot of stuff. I also do write poetry. I just don't tell anybody about it because it's bad. So there we go.
I doubt that. Remember, I read that collection. All right, so
thank you.
Oh boy. Anyway, I love how modest all of you were. Thank you for that. But really, I mean, that was unnecessary. You could have just said the things that, there's so much. You look these folks up if you don't know who they are. All right, let's jump in. There is this movement going on that I'm noticing about people not, or cons not wanting to call panels like this diversity panels, and they're becoming obsolete. They're instead they're trying to have a broader stroke at diversity and making the whole con be diverse and that kind of thing. But what do you think? Do you think we still need to talk about African Americans in horror, or can we just say, okay, we're done? We don't need to touch upon it specifically.
I don't think that's true at all. I mean, I've been in here a long time. And it's just starting to open up more as far as I'm concerned, the people on this panel and more that are not on this panel. So it's just starting to publish, promote more people who have been out there writing for a long time. Wrath has been out there writing for a long time, you know that. And so I think that is very relevant. I think the word diversity perhaps has become a thing that people don't want to use that word. So whatever, use the word you want, but just say that the fact is that there are still not even ground for other kinds of people in horror.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree with that. I think most of us have been to conventions in the last 4 or 5 years. Even if you've been to one in the last 4 or 5 months, you'll see that the diversity efforts are there. However, when you go online, and you look up, hey, most popular horror authors, most famous horror authors, most, whatever, favorite horror authors. Ain't a lot of us on that list.
True.
I mean, even when you look at the horror conventions that we do attend, it's and you look at the cover of like the program books, they tend to be rather monochromatic. When you look at the advertising, it tends to be a little monochromatic. So in that regard, I think we need to keep pushing it. And the diversity and inclusion, I like the term expansive. We need to expand. I don't want to just be included in your thing. I want your thing to expand to connect with what I'm doing. So
love that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll jump in and say I agree with all of that. And on top of that, like look past what's happening with us and look into the world for a little bit. We're in a space where books are being banned. And not to mention the fact that people aren't being taught the actual history in the first place. Like history class is in schools right now is still a sham. Okay. And I know that because when I sit in on diversity panels and whatever, a lot of which, I think I end up on them because, I get the label of, for appearance's sake, I'm light skinned and harmless. And then they actually hear me talk. And then it's like, oh, damn. And then and what's funny about that too is then as I'm leaving the conference hall, I always get one wide-eyed child that everything I said really resonated. And they're like, oh my God, Mr. Van Patten, I just want to talk to you for a minute. And, and it's like whatever question about whatever we're all going to as people of color, like I somehow have to wrap that up to them in like this 5-minute conversation. Yeah, no, I disagree with the fact that we should discontinue anything that involves us pursuing diversity and inclusion and all of us and all of our relative friends and everything else like that. All of us need to get our due, especially Linda, I want to say. But I'm just saying, it's like, now you're starting to drift into the area of letting white people off the hook. And no, I'm not down with that at all.
Well, even to just extrapolate on that, what Stephen is talking about, when you have something like an anthology that's not about Black horror, and specifically, if you only have one Black writer every single time, like I look at these calls and I look at who's already on board, and I'm like, okay, so you can only have one, as long as we're still doing that whole, but I mean, we can only have one, as long as we're still doing that, then these discussions are very, very important. They are very, very necessary. Even in the convention spaces, when you kind of look around and you go, oh, all the Black horror writers I see are the ones I already know.
Exactly.
Right? It's like, hey, wait a minute. So what's happening here? Like, and we've been doing this for a really long time. I mean, like it's kind of nerve-wracking, because you go, it's almost like paying lip service and saying, okay, well, we have one, we let that one on as guest honor, and then we let that one do this. And so that's kind of all we need to do. And it's like, no, I'm thinking, I'm gonna need you to keep running with that. I'm gonna need you to keep doing that, because we're not where it needs to be, especially since books are being banned now. So now that we actually are getting a chance to play, even in small numbers, now you want to take the ball and go home. That's not okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I love what Ralph said about calling it expansive. That's so much more meaningful to me. And okay, so y'all know I was the first and all that jazz. And I'm just like, I don't want to be the Black unicorn anymore. I need them to, not just everyone here who is been out there and publishing. There are so many more people of color that are writing and that are showing up and everything. So no, I need a little bit more and stop, well, I don't go for that. Like I'm the only one crap. So.
Right. I mean, it brings to, it's funny because Paula unfortunately is dropping off, but I mean, I thought to myself when you made the comment about there's only a few of us and it's the same people all the time. And when I met Paula, I was like, hey, wait a minute. I've never met you before. And that's, you should feel like you know everybody in the same, you know what I mean? But you do kind of know everybody. And that's unfortunate. I mean, it really, really is, which leads me to the next thing. I mean, so we all write different things. We all do. I mean, I'm making this face because look, Rath, your book is still sitting back here. I got, which one of the I put it down. I was like, no, right? I was like, I can't. I'm at the space for that right now. And I get like through a page a month or so. You are trying to kill me. But anyway. But there's space for all of it is what's beautiful. And y'all know I write this quiet psychological stuff and I feel incredibly small and very, very quiet when I read his work. So anyway, I'm just saying when we write our stuff though, I've always felt that if I wrote it, it's coming from a Black person. Therefore, it's a Black piece of work. Do we feel as though we have to populate the stories with Black characters, fill it with, I don't know, traditions and stuff that's inherently us so that it can be Black enough? And I hate that term because it doesn't, we get that criticism not only from, put it this way, we don't get the criticism from where we always expect it, right? So when we look at that, my argument rarely holds water when I say I'm Black and I wrote it. Of course, it's a Black story. I have to really fight for that. And but we find, and this leads into a different question later, which I'm sure the conversation will lead to. But what we find when we do fight for that, and when we do pack it full of all these things just to try and get to show, yes, it is a Black piece of work. That doesn't always get us what we think it's going to get us either. Do you feel when you're writing your stuff, whatever it is, short story, novel, poetry, whatever it is, do you feel compelled to pack it full of Black characters, Black stuff, so that you can be seen and known as a Black writer?
I do not. And I never have. I've always written what I wanted to write. And so early on, nobody even knew I was Black because I wasn't going to conventions, right? So, I mean, from my point of view, anyone is allowed to write whatever the heck they want to write from their point of view, how soft and hard it is. I love Rath's stuff. First time Rath went to an open mic, I think, is when I heard you actually read your stuff many years ago, Rath, and the poetry. And I was like, I'm getting chills just remembering it. So I think we have to write what we want to write. I will say really quickly, I went to a convention some years ago when there were more Blacks at a horror convention than ever before. Jeff Carroll was there with his book. I think it's called, and correct me if I'm wrong, It Happened on Negro Mountain. Please. I was done. I was like, what happened? I want to know. And, he was on a panel talking about it. And for him, and I hope he doesn't mind that I say this because I think it's a lovely example of writing what you want and why. He wanted to write, and if you know his work, he does his stuff in like a Black thing, right? Rap, the neighborhood, the everything, because he wanted to write and have people that he knew see it. There's nothing wrong with wanting to do that. I don't write that way. I write what I write. I write what comes to me. And that's my point. Everyone should be able to do what they want to do. I can't say for other people what is important for them when they're writing.
I purposely do that. Yeah, here, go ahead, Rath.
No, you go.
Well, I purposely do center Black female experiences in my writing. And the reason why I do that is because I really ascribe to that Morrison quote where she says, basically, write the stories you want to see. And in horror, I just did not grow up or even now see a ton of stories that center Black female experiences. And so this is the way the stories come to me. I want to write about you know, the different women that I know, the different women that I've seen, because I feel like horror through that lens is going to be a little bit different. And it's just something that we don't get to see. So I do unapologetically write about blackity black, ghetto you know, upper echelon and the talented all of that, all of these, because that's all this encompasses a black experience, right? So I do that on purpose. Now, do I feel compelled to? I have to admit that doing that as an intentional choice has actually means that there is less visibility, if I could say it like that, like, right, because it's gonna be, you know, there's people that go, well, wait, this is not as hood as I thought it was gonna be. This is like very, very extreme, and this is very scary. And it's like, okay, but have you ever lived in a hood? I mean, I'm just saying, it's scary like that. It's scary like that. I know. I grew up here, right? Like I grew up in Houston. These are things that, yeah, this is a thing that could really happen, right? And so I feel like doing that intentionally, of course, I understand that my writing is going to be put in certain places. So I get excited when it actually seeps out into other spaces and they kind of go, oh wait, she was talking about Black folks and Black people stuff, but she mentioned right a little bit. She can kind of do that. So, you know, that's where I get kicks about this whole thing.
Yeah. So when I write, it's I write about whatever's pissing me off at the moment, typically. So arguments to me are what usually fuel what I want to write. And lately, it has been a lot more about the Black experience, my experience in particular. So, but that's not always the case. Early in my career, I wasn't writing a lot of stuff that had a lot of Black characters. And as Rhonda pointed out earlier, the stuff that I did write that had a lot of Black characters, I noticed that those weren't the ones that got the most notice or the most acclaim. In fact, when I wrote The Resurrectionist, that wasn't supposed to be my second published novel. Yaqub's Curse was supposed to be the second one. And about a month before they were supposed to publish it, suddenly they go, you know, we decided that we don't want this book. And this was a month before the book was supposed to be published. And they said, do you have something else? And so I sat down and cranked out The Resurrectionist, which wound up being one of my most successful novels. But I wanted Yaqub's Curse to be my second novel. In fact, I will say this, I have at times tried to play the game going, all right, I'll throw one novel out that's blackety black, and then the next one, I'll make it more palatable to the mainstream, I should say. And so I have tried to play that game, but usually publishers they f up anyway, and they wind up releasing the wrong books in the wrong orders. I'm sorry, I dropped the F-bomb.
I think we're 15 minutes in. It's whatever.
Come on now. You knew what I was going to do when you invited me.
That's why I said specifically.
Nothing but love for you always, Wrath. You know that.
All right. But yeah, you know, I am aware that when I write books that do have predominantly Black characters, that it's not going to reach as far. Like even Rabbit Hunt that just came out, the villains in it are Black. And I was like, and they talk like the folks I grew up with. And they have conversations that may not be the type of conversations that folks of other color are used to hearing. So, but at this point, I just write whatever I want. So I don't really think about it. Now, I will say this, I have been cognizant of the fact that I have a very specific experience in the Black community. I grew up in Philadelphia in the 80s, in pretty much the hood. And so when I write, that's the perspective I'm writing about. And there's a lot of us writing from that perspective. And I would love to see more people writing from, hey, what was it like growing up as a middle-class Black person? Or what was it growing up as an upper class? Or what was it like growing up as a I don't know, with a Black parent and a white parent, or so on and so forth. We just don't see a lot of that. And I would like to see more of that. Unfortunately, that diversity within the Black community is hard to get because there's not a lot of us actually getting our voices out there to begin with. There's a lot of us writing. Don't get it wrong. You go on Amazon and you look up African American horror, there's a lot of us writing. It's just not all reaching out there. It's not, they're not getting in, we're not all getting invited to conventions. We're not all getting, like I said, awards and, put on the best horror author lists. I'm still salty about that. So I might bring that up three or four times more.
Oh my gosh.
All right. So in order to be honest, I have to hit it like this. A lot of my work originates from, again, full disclosure, as kind of a trauma response. As a kid, I was a too intelligent horror sci-fi comic book nerd. And I experienced whatever you may think that comes with that, from, evil ass grade school and teenage kids, whatever you think came with that, that's what I experienced. So when I, as level set escapism, I start leaning into comics and horror movies and everything else like that. That was just, I feel like that was a natural response to what was going on in my life. Then, as I got older, I realized that, especially with horror, I was in, people throw this around a lot, but it definitely applies to me. I had fallen in love with something that didn't love me back. And so, and along with my admiration of William Marshall and Blackula and a whole bunch of other stuff that came along with that, I'll give you this quick little anecdote. At 12, I've read The Shining, or at least I've read it as well as a 12-year-old can read it, if you know what I'm saying. Because obviously, as a grown man, The Shining's going to hit a little different because things aren't going over your head or whatever. The movie comes out. My mother's like, my birthday. My mother's like, so what do you want to do? I was like, I want to go see The Shining. Remember, in The Shining, the Black man's the hero. Black man saves the day. If I were the cynical man that I am now, I would know the very casting of Scatman Crothers. As lovely as a man as he was, if I had looked at that the right way, I would have realized I was getting set up for the okie doke. But I'm freaking 12. So I have my mother and my aunt take me to see The Shining, because I can't go by myself theoretically, because, all right, we sit there, not knowing the backstory, not knowing that Stanley Kubrick and Stephen King are having this big, basically, dick length contest. It's like they go through this, they make this movie, and Scatman Crothers takes the axe in the chest, and my mother and my aunt, two Black women from Alabama, give me the blues all the way home. Forget everything else. This eventually put me on the path where I was going to be trying to write things. So I guess I share all of that just to say, yes, a lot of my stuff tends to have Black themes. I mean, don't get me wrong. My first priority when I'm starting to put anything down is to make a good horror story. However, and you can call this trauma response, You can call this whatever you want to call it. I do address our issues in a lot of my work. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
I wanted to just add to, because I love hearing what everyone's saying from their point of view. I want to add that for me, like I said, writing what comes means writing authentically. In many ways, when Rath was saying, I get pissed off and I write, what authentic means for me is, what am I feeling hurting inside? What am I angry about? What am I, whatever. And so if you do it from that point of view, I truly believe you don't always have to be thinking, am I writing Black? If you're writing from here. So, as Lisa said, just you being a Black author doesn't mean that everything you write has to have all the characters of Black.
Right.
If you're writing authentically as a Black author, you're going to be writing what everybody here is saying they're dealing with.
Exactly.
When I started writing Succulent Prey, in fact, when I finished writing Succulent Prey, I realized, there ain't no Black characters in this book. And but I also realized it's because I had a prejudice at the time. And when I thought of serial killers, I thought of white folks.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, but you know what? We're laughing, but nobody can say no. Of course we did.
So, when I wrote like Pure Hate, for instance, I deliberately made the serial killer Black because you didn't see a lot of that.
Right.
And that's the whole reason why I did Rabbit Hunt as well, is because, the redneck serial killer in the wood thing was just, I'm so sick of reading it. I don't read it. Put it that way. I don't read those books anymore. But I thought, hey, what if I had like a Black fraternity out there killing white folks? And I was like, that's something I haven't seen before. And I armored up.
That's what happens with me, Rath, is I want something different. I write something different. I wrote a Black woman who was a hired killer, who is now a protector and dealing with the ghosts of the people she had killed. And I was like, oh, I'd never seen that. Let's do that. And I didn't sell it. I put it in my own book. I sent it out. People loved it. They loved the story, but somehow it just was, I don't know what the reason was. There's a lot that we could say about it. I didn't care. I put it in my book. Happy, loved it.
I did a similar thing in that, so after reading all the Thomas Harris stuff, Hannibal Lecter and blah, 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 I was kind of left with the idea of, well, we turned Hannibal Lecter into this glorified character mainly because he's outsmarting the FBI. Normally, when you see anything, a book or a movie where a Black woman is, let's say, joking a couple of people, it's basically like because her husband decided to be community property or something along those lines. So when I put Killer Genius together, I was like, you know what? I'm going to make her this socially conscious but ridiculously intelligent person, because that's what Hannibal is. And right. So, but by making her socially conscious, I also had her killing, deplorable white people, but I also had her killing a couple of guys that were in the hip hop thing, and the lyrics were misogynistic and so on. Because it's like, if you're really trying to like improve stuff, there's multiple things you can be doing. And then, it's like, when I did that, it's like, that's probably my best selling thing. I mean, my heart is in my vampire stuff, but I would be at a convention and random sister would walk by the table. What's this about? And I would say, oh, it's a hyperintelligence, socially conscious Black woman who's a serial killer. And they can't give me the money fast enough.
I'd buy it. I want to read it now.
Right?
Well, thanks, Beth. I appreciate you for that. But no, seriously, you know, the fact that I did that, I mean, I'm happy with it. I'm proud, the whole thing. But then it's like, you know, I'm always in the space where it's like, well, somebody should have probably thought of this before I did. But it is what it is, right?
Yeah. Well, it's your story. I mean, you did it.
Right.
And so that it kind of is what it is, you know. And I think that that's one of the things about being able to write through these lenses that we have these experiences, is that we can take those well-worn tropes, right, and we can turn them into something a little bit different, you know. And I think that this is the thing that excites me when we see people that have been writing forever, because I mean, I remember reading Rath's work for the first time, and I was just in awe, because I was like, wait a minute, that's just, we could do that? It's just a thing that you could do? Like, we could just do the most crazy, scary, extreme thing. You mean that I could just do that? Really? So we're able to dig in, and you know, so I feel no problems with writing, you know, my little romance stories to what I think romance is, you know, where you're fed on the corpse of your lover, right? Or you know, or thinking about like a woman as a serial killer, Black women, or a woman that turns into a monster. We can do that because we have these tropes that we just haven't been able to play with a lot, and that's, I get really excited about that, because I think, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff that we just haven't been able to see, right? And we get a little bit of it, and then we get a little bit of, you know, Rath is here doing this thing, and it's like, okay, Stephen is out here doing this, okay, Lisa's doing this thing, okay, Linda's doing this thing, and it's like, you know what? I got all this stuff that we can kind of play around with, and that's really exciting to me, because through the lens of the Black experience, that is not a monolith. Everybody's experience is not the same, right? It's just, there is no the Black experience, right? But through the lens of these experiences and the way that we experience them, that is really exciting to me. It gives us so much space to play, and so many ways to tell these stories, and I think that that's a really big opportunity, as long as we are given that opportunity. That's the thing. As long as the opportunity is there, I think most of us are really excited to take it.
Well, you know, and that leads in, oh, I'm sorry, do you want to say something, Rath?
I was just going to say that, and I think bringing our experiences, our unique experiences as unique individuals, but also as Black folks, to these tropes that people might be sick of. They may have seen 100 times, but they haven't seen it from our perspective. They haven't seen it, tell it through our lens. And that, I would think that more people would be excited to see that. It's like, oh, another vampire novel? Yeah, but this one's Black and from, you know, from Compton. Like, you know, like that breathes a whole different life into it, you know. I just watched last night, I watched The Angry Black Woman and Her Monster, which was basically a retelling of Frankenstein in the hood, basically. And I loved it. Like, I mean, it wasn't a flawless movie by any means, but it was unique. And I think that's what we have to offer, is we've heard all the tales from their perspective. You know, not to put it as us versus them, but from their perspective, we've heard all these stories before. All right. And we've heard them repeated again and again, and recycled and reused and so on and so forth. Putting our own spin on it now allows us to breathe life into these old tired ass tropes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But and to keep the genre running.
Yeah.
Like it won't, because we can't have it cannibalize itself.
True.
No pun intended.
but for who's, see, there's that whole thing about Black people not reading horror. You know, you've heard this. You know, you've heard this. And
absolutely, I've heard this.
stuff as well.
I certainly
I've
heard
been in
this.
my own, you go to these little, it depends upon where you are. If you're at a convention, we're in a little bubble. We have our little bubble of all of us knowing, and everyone's doing all these things. And like Rhonda, you mentioned all the stuff we have access to, but my neighbor doesn't know our names at all. I mean, they live right next door to me. They have no idea. They don't know, and they wouldn't be able to figure it out. So they say Black people don't read horror. And I have been approached by a Black person and told very well that I there's something wrong and I need to take care of myself. That happened in November. Rhonda, you were there. My God, it happened in November. I couldn't make him move away from our table, but it was a thing. And this is really what some people think. So if we're doing all of this, making sure that we're putting the representation out there, but is it getting to the Black readers that we want to at least see what we're trying to do?
Not always. It definitely not always. And part of that, and I'm not trying to criticize anybody's religiosity or anything like that, but I can't even tell you how many times I've been in this conversation. Oh, you write blah, blah, you write horror, you write this, you write that. And it'll always be somebody that can like quote like the book of Leviticus and all this other nonsense.
Why is it always Leviticus?
And it's not nonsense, maybe. I don't know.
No, it is.
But okay, so my struggle is the same person that will sit there and act like I need to be institutionalized, or they need to come bring an exorcist on some Ename de Patria Fili Espiritu Sante or whatever whatever they got going on in their head. They'll still go see Freddy Krueger. They'll still sit through Michael Myers. They'll still sit through all of that, but then treat me like I'm this mutant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm good. Full disclosure, I'm sick of it.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Absolutely. So and to piggyback off of that, so us writing horror. And, speaking of the folks who would say we need Jesus because of what we write, all right, but those same folks will pick up like Captain Save-A-Ho Volume 10.
I'm in love with a stripper and all that.
Exactly, and they don't see anything wrong with that. They'll listen to the most brutal, misogynistic, violent gangster rap and then think I'm crazy because I wrote about a cannibal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things, I was talking to my brother Vince here because he loves horror. I love horror. We're going to watch a movie after this. I haven't seen a horror movie. I like all that stuff. Soft, hard, you give it to me. I got it. I'm there for it. And I think in conversation with him or with Roxy, my sister-in-law, we're talking about how Peele, with his movies, Nope, and the three that he's come out, have started to make the conversation about Blacks in horror, writing horror, more horror movies. He is opening that up. And this is slow change. Again, Lisa, you starting with like, is it not relevant? Is this irrelevant anymore? People close, but that he is doing movies that are being watched by all kinds of people in this country and starting to see, oh yeah, I mean, we were like, but he started off in comedy, but he is killing it. And by killing, I do mean both sides of that one. And so that is starting to bring the concept in more. I don't even care what people said to me clearly in all these years, but and I also think that in spite of what everyone's saying about being looked side-eyed at being Black and writing horror, that because there's so much more now. I am telling you guys, many, many years ago, there just was a handful. Not even a handful. And now there's so many you can't put hands. All of our hands can't count all the people writing Black and being published.
Well, I think that this is one of those conversations, because that same dude that you're talking about, Lisa, he started out at my table earlier in the event And so this is when I start pulling out all my wonderful Southern Baptist girl training. And I start talking about how we're talking about Black spirituality, right? I'm like, we're talking about spirits and ghosts. Y'all didn't talk about that at your church? And usually I get this kind of look like, oh, did she say that? I'm like, yeah, I was there. I grew up in the church. Yeah, we talk about spirits, don't we? We talk about everlasting life. We talk about these things, don't we?
Why don't you
We talk
tell me
about
to
that?
say some of that stuff? I got stuck in this conversation.
Well, I had already told him, and so for him to go over there with you and do the same thing, I guess he was like, that one over there thinks she too much. She thinks she too smart. She using too many big words and pulling out too much theory on me or something. I don't know why he went over there talking the same thing. I guess he was just really hurt to his soul that he could say Black women are not supposed to do this. And this is the thing. I mean, I live in Texas. I've lived here my whole life. Right. So I get this. And a lot of because the Black church has been such a foundation in Black people gathering. Like when we have different Black Black book festivals, they're typically held in churches. So I have been, that one that's going in with my horror books, my little Black candles. I got the folks side on me telling they're gonna bring the pastor over and they're gonna want to put some oil in the pray. And then I have to explain, okay, but listen, I have to explain, first of all, there is poetry in the Bible. And everything in that beautiful book is not all roses and rainbows, right? And so
Revelations.
When I get to that point, I get some of those kind of, you know what, you right. I'm not gonna read this book, but I'm gonna buy it because you Black and I want to support you. And I'm like, that's great. I mean, you done bought it. I don't really care what you do with it, but but I say that to say that horror in a lot of its forms is so intertwined with Black history with it and Black horror. It's like, so why wouldn't we? I mean, who better to tell horrific stories than a people that are still experiencing horror in all kinds of ways? Like, this is a perfect fit. So, that's when I pull out those words.
Remember this, folks, because that's exactly what we need to say moving forward. You just said Black horror. Let's talk a little bit about that as a genre. Like, what do you think about it? I go back and forth. Does it ostracize us as as Black writers, horror authors, or does it legitimize? Not that we needed it to be our experiences to be legitimized, but does it legitimize the writing and the viability of this writing as something that's worthy to be read widespread? Black horror as a genre specifically, because that is taking off too.
I'm a long-term study human psychology. Like, I'm just always curious. I'm just trying to figure out why people do what they do and say what they say. And humans love to give titles and names to things. We can talk about religion. We can take a religion and split and give it another name and split and give another name. I don't have any negative feeling about my work being called Black horror. That means you're gonna buy it. I think also it's a highlight on the fact that there's so many things out there now that people actually are recognizing that it's not just one or two or three people. So I mean, I don't say that that's how everyone feels about it, because back in the day when the bookstores sold horror, science fiction, fantasy, and then all of a sudden, you all remember when they all went into fiction. Yeah. I have mixed feelings about that. I was, because you want to go look people up by the last name or something like that. But then if someone wanted horror, science fiction, or fantasy, they got to really know the author to find them. So I'm curious to hear what everyone else says,
Well, I used to really not like the label Black horror author. I wanted to just be horror author. All right. But then at the same time, when February would roll around and everybody was looking to fill their baskets with Black horror authors, I didn't pop up on Amazon as a Black horror author. So I made a decision that, hey, I'm at this point, I need to be able to play in both worlds. So in fact, with my latest release, it did debut as a Black horror novel. And
nice.
So it may not have been the #1 horror debut on Kindle Unlimited or on Amazon or whatever, but it was the #1 black horror.
Yes.
I'll take that.
I
And
I'll
mean,
take
bad.
Uh-huh.
yeah, I
Because
feel like
when
at
you
the end of the
have,
day, sometimes you got to just deal with the cards you're dealt.
Mm-hmm.
and the reality is the people who are compiling these lists are lazy. They're
Yes.
lazy. They're going to do a Google search, black horror authors, and if you are not labeling yourself as a black horror author when that list comes out in Newsweek or whatever, you ain't gonna be on it.
Well, yeah,
Right.
they're lazy and they're probably not us.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
sure. Exactly.
Let's call it what it is. And I mean, what ends up happening, at least I think, is so you get limited in two ways. One, if it's a white person that's uninformed or just not doing the research or being lazy, as Ralph said, then yeah, you risk being excluded. But then when it's us and it's not what they expect, because okay, so get back to Jordan Peele for a minute. I have a theory about Jordan Peele. And the theory is that he, in his 3 movies so far, he is actually kind of occupying the vacancy that Alfred Hitchcock left open. And people who want to see us stab at each other on Soul Plane do not understand what he's doing necessarily. And so then it becomes that kind of thing because, look, Get Out was revolutionary just in the sense that you had a black man as the damsel in distress. And that, and for the most part, people got behind it without even fully understanding why they liked it, at least in my opinion. And then the other 2 movies, real cerebral, but again, not, Snoop Dogg doesn't pop out and say, "What's up, man?" There's nothing that we unfortunately kind of have to shoulder as artists. Like if you don't do certain things, you don't hit certain notes, it's like you're lost. It's like people will sit there and pretend they don't relate because they're not trying to do the work. Anyway, I don't know. It's just, my thoughts.
Yeah, well, and it does put us in a position. I mean, because as a fan, like I've been a fan of the genre since I was a kid, and I just like good stories. I like good stories. I like the stories that are absurd. I like the stories that are extreme. I like the stories that are subtle. I like the stories that are psychological. Like I love all of it. And so as a fan, I'm always looking for a good story. So it's never been great to me. And Lisa and I talk about this all the time. We talk about these trends. Some of these trends, like I'm sitting there going, what? People are reading what and you're doing what? I mean, I guess there should be something for everybody, but at the end of the day, is it a good story? Has it been written well? Does this artist pay really good attention to their craft? Do they go and improve? Like maybe, because I know the first book I ever wrote was like, really, it was just terrible. I mean, I was a good enough writer, but I wasn't a great writer. So I work all the time to improve. This is what I look for in the art that I'm consuming. Like, are you paying attention to your craft? Are you improving? But it does put us in a spot where we have to think about what we're trying to do. Like I have to tell myself constantly, you're not doing this for them. Like it's a sting, because I feel you, Raz. I feel that. I felt that with that one list. I felt that for you and the other writers I saw not on there. I didn't feel that for me because I'm like, no, I'm talking about these. The OGs should have been, all of them, all of y'all should have been. But it does put you in a spot where you go, why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I don't know how to not. I have to tell these stories and I'm really good at it. Nobody can tell an RJ Joseph story like RJ Joseph can. And so that's what I have to do. So regardless to, the list and the awards and the nod and the invites, and I mean, those are wonderful. And I'm not going to sit here and act like they don't matter. They do. But I think that we are put in a very particular position where we have to think about what is it that we're trying to do. If I get one little Black girl that sees my book and says, oh my gosh, I want to be a writer when I grow up, I'm good with that. Because when I was little, there were hardly any, right, that I could look at and say I could do that. If I get one little, teenager that says, oh my gosh, I wish I had powers like that girl and to kill everybody and do this, that's what it's really all about. So sometimes we have to think about our goals, I think. And for me, it means keeping myself not humble, but keeping myself in reality, I guess, in understanding that, you're probably not going to be here and you're probably not going to be there, but you are right where you're supposed to be, and you need to just keep doing what you do.
And so the importance, I agree with you, it's fulfilling when you see that little Black boy decides they want to be a writer because of something they read of yours. But how do they find your work?
Sure.
That's the importance of the awards.
Yes,
that's the
absolutely.
importance of the invites. That's the importance of all the accolades and so on and so forth. It's not just representation. It's visibility is a big issue.
Sure, it is. It really is. I totally agree with you. It is.
Sorry. I'm breaking up.
What you fed right into the comment. The next thing I was going to talk about, Wrath, is that so like gatekeeping is a thing, right? I mean, we're all talking very positively about what we're doing, and we all should feel this way. Or else we wouldn't do it, right? But gatekeeping is a thing, and very well, I'm almost positive that each of us has heard, well, I just didn't resonate with that, or especially since in Linda and I don't necessarily make our characters often our characters are not. My characters are not often Black, or sometimes you just can't tell. I mean, it depends upon the mood. But if you still can't resonate because you saw my picture as the person who submitted it, then that's a concern. If you know who Elle Marie Wood is, and you know that she's a Black woman, and you say, well, I can't resonate with this story, and there's no good reason outside of the fact that it could be about a topic that is related to Black people, then that's a concern that we can't necessarily surmount with just good writing. We want to have a good story. We want to have all of that. Do we, and I hate not to coin a phrase from a terrible time in our history, but should we all still just get along, or should we be looking at doing different things? How do we handle editors? How do we handle agents and publishers and the award system and the whole con thing? All of this stuff has been, Black people being or I should say the experience being diverse, as we talked about earlier. But how do we make it expansive and have for them to make room, as opposed to letting a couple of us in? How do we make the room so that we're all supposed to actually be there and be seen, as opposed to just fitting in where we can?
We take on as many leadership positions as we can. Like, first of all, we take on as many editorial positions, as many publisher positions, as many reviewer positions, as many acquisitions positions as we can. Because that's what's going to make the thing. And I know that some people say, oh, well, the only reason why that person took their story was because they were a Black editor too, and that's a Black writer. But have you ever worked with a Black editor? Oh, baby, they will tell you, you better come with it. You better bring your A game, because you're not about to make all of us look crazy up in here. So you're going to get a better level of a story than you would get from somewhere else. So with us being in these organization leadership positions, with us talking about and giving, I think that we also need to give nods to the writers that have come, that were doing this before. Like, the more we talk about the Lindas and the Raths and the Lisas and the Dews and the Butlers, the more we talk about them and acknowledge, hey, none of us would be here if they weren't doing what they do, then I think that would be important too. But we literally have to not be stubborn enough to not give up, keep doing it. I'm too ornery and old to just stop. Like, I ain't going nowhere. So whoever don't like it, that's just a little bit too bad. But we need to get into these positions where we can acquire works, where we can write the list, where we can vote for the awards. Like, we just need to make sure that we are getting in as many as we can. Yes, it's going to be hard. Yes, people are not going to want us to do that. But I do think that when we can, we do it. We do, like, we pull a Linda. We get where we are, and then we open up the gate. We hold open the doors with both hands for everybody else. Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. That's the one thing. It's one of the things I most love about Linda, amongst a lot of others, is that she says she gonna throw the doors open and be like, y'all, come on. Everybody, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. While she's standing there holding them open. So we have to do that. We have to do that for each other. Like, we got to help each other. We can't be sitting here looking at, like you say, the Paula coming in. We need to embrace Paula and let Paula know that, listen, you can be exactly where everybody else is gone. Like, we have to help each other. Like, I know I said a whole bunch of stuff right there, but yeah. I'm very passionate about that.
It's all the truth. You know that it's the truth. I mean, for me, like I said, the long distance that I've been in horror, and so often, like, you know, in the very beginning, like, who knew else was Black? Wrath and John Lawson, right? Legal came after that, but I mean, there just wasn't. And then when the awards started, I always said this. I was like, you know what? Me sitting as you know, first Black winning the Bram Stoker, which I still and continue to say I thought she was going to be Tananarive Due. No, that's a sad room for Linda drinking by herself. I can't do this, y'all. I need somebody in there with me. But I mean, I think the thing is that to be an active person in this field, activating for other people, you have to also know what is it that you can and cannot do. Like, it takes time to do these things, right? So maybe the time to do these things is not for you. But to be aware, you know, to be aware, I am beside myself with seeing people recognizing Wrath finally. I mean, for God's sake, you know what I'm saying?
Right, right.
Whatever you need, that's your sake. I mean, come on, you know, and Wrath's work from the beginning was quality. I can't say whatever you might give yourself as a criticism, Wrath, but you know, I've been reading your stuff forever. And so the point is whether you are able to take a leadership position in a convention, like what you're doing, Lisa, doing these panels, whatever you can do, you do. Just showing up in the room. When Wrath walks in the room, when Stephen walks in the room, RJ, you walk in the room, you're already activating.
Yeah.
By being there. So it's a matter of what you can do and just keep doing the writing. Like, you know, the bottom line, like we all know, is the best writing possible. No, and there's no such thing as like best Black writing. There's best writing. Writing, activating.
And I'll add to that. In addition to taking those leadership roles, we need to be mentoring the newer writers coming up, because like you mentioned earlier, Rhonda, about how some of the Black editors can be some of the toughest because they don't want to let something in that's going to mess it up. Well, now we've got a lot of self-published authors, and they can definitely mess it up. So we need to grab some of them and say, hey, brother, hey, sister, let me talk to you about where commas go.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
I mean, we need to do that in a loving manner, but we need to do that. And then, like you said, when we are in positions to push people and put them on, we need to do that as well.
Yes.
There's a young brother, Roland Bursey Jr. And when he came to KillerCon the first time, I was like, what's your name, brother? And we talked for a minute. Then I threw his ass on a panel. And every year he comes, he looks at me and I'm like, yep, you're on a panel. You know, and now people are starting to recognize it. And now
I feel like somebody on this panel has done that to me a couple of times.
That's
and not even on the panel, moderating the panel. I'm looking through the brochure and I'm like, wait, what? Lisa.
Well, we need to do that for each other. We need to do that.
We do. We really do. We have to help each other.
Mhm.
Because there's no way that I would be any part of where I am without people helping me. And so I'm always looking for ways to try to pay that forward. And there should never be just a couple of us. I do not ascribe to that whole we can only have one.
Oh, no.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. They ain't just one or nobody else.
And let me tell
So,
you,
Right.
and you
oh,
show that.
I
Yeah,
mean,
and you show
you
that. You
see an
help other
article
people.
written that I read an article and I don't want to say who it is because I totally respect them, but I don't want them to feel a certain kind of way because I'm saying their name here. Says about, and I don't think they would, but anyway, about, you know, the fact that I was like the Black unicorn. I was right there with them. I was like, yeah, what about that? That ain't right. I mean, for me, that was not the thing. And the thing is, you know, it's not about creating a Black network. The network is how every group in this country and world has gone forward.
Yes.
That's
Oh,
what
yes.
sororities and fraternities do. That's what, if you want to talk about whatever color men and females,
Yes.
it's a network. So we are our own network too. Why not? Why not?
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at the writers that are coming in. Like I see writers that are in other groups, and I'm like, okay, so this OG writer took them under their belt, and they're getting all these opportunities. Okay, this younger writer, this OG writer, they took them, and it's like, okay, we really should do that for each other too.
Have to.
There's not anything.
Together.
Yeah,
There
there's
ain't
no reason why
by
we
your
shouldn't.
bootstraps is lifting. Everybody lifts.
Oh, of course, of
Lose.
course.
I don't lose nothing by lifting somebody else. That's what I tell people.
Exactly.
Corporate America,
Exactly.
computers. I was just like the way my Virgo brain worked. I was always organizing data and sharing and stuff. I wasn't losing because I was sharing data.
Yeah, no, you never do. That's when things get even better. Because once somebody else manages to break through those barricades, see that's the space for all of us to come right on behind, right there. Whoever gets through, that's fine. I'm gonna lift you up because when you get up there, I know you're gonna reach your hand back. Like that's not, and you have to think about who the people that you actually engage with, because everybody is not really about that life. Everybody's not about that life, and you cannot let yourself get steeped down with, you know, with the people that are not gonna help and not gonna want to progress and don't want to grow. You got to leave them where they at.
Yeah.
No
Hey,
as
the saying goes, not all skin folk is kinfolk, you know?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
you know.
Survey said, ding. Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding.
So let me ask you this, because we're getting on time, but I still want to ask these next two questions if I can. If you were in the opportunity, if you had the opportunity to give advice to editors and publishers about African-American writers, you know, the work that we're producing, what would you say? We're going back to that whole concept about gatekeeping and it being a real thing, because there, you know, there's been discussion back and forth about how that's not a thing, it's a construct we're coming up with, but I don't agree with that. So if we know that gatekeeping is real, what advice would you give editors and publishers today?
Well, I think there's a point and I've said this on panels before, that it's a lazy point to say you're an editor and you can't find a expansive writers to put in. You're being lazy. That's not, you can't just say, I'm open to all writers, because it's not an even field. It's not a clean field. So you got to put in a little bit more energy and make sure you're reaching out where you got to reach out to different communities. And the people that are doing it in different ways, whether it be blind readings, that alone is not it. You got to go out there, or getting a reading group of editorial staff that's a mix of experience. I love that word, Wrath. I may wear that word out.
Yes. I know, that's my new word for the week. That's the word I'm gonna use this week.
And you know why that word is important is because just what you said, how so many editors and publishers say, you know, we're inclusive. We're inclusive. We welcome everybody. You don't actively welcome. All right. Saying everyone is allowed to submit, that's one thing. But actually going out and welcoming people and saying, hey Rhonda, hey Stephen, hey
Yes.
Lisa, Linda, I would like you to submit to my
Yes.
anthology. I would like you to submit your novel to my publishing.
Yes.
That's becoming expansive. Inclusive
Yes.
is passive. That's a
Yes.
passive, you
I mean,
know?
there was a saying that I came across, I put it up as an image at some point, and I can't remember it exactly, but something like, to echo what Rath is saying, is one thing to say anyone's invited to a dance to dance. It's a whole nother thing is to say, Rath, come, let's dance. It takes time, energy, and mindfulness to look and say, Stephen, I want you to dance. As opposed to anyone can come dance.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. I think I would tell editors to not make their ignorance and their lack of world experience the writer's problem.
Woo!
It's not my problem if you never read about people like me. Don't put that on me. You need to go do your homework. Go read a lot of stuff. Don't do it. So don't do that to me. That's not as a writer, that is not my problem, that you don't know what to do with my characters. If you're doing what you're supposed to do, that means that you're supposed to know how to handle that. So go learn something, go read a book.
Can I just say something? Because that you just made me remember. I wrote something about a bone straight perm in one of my pieces, and it got kicked back. An editor talking about what is that? I'm like, what do you mean? What is that? No, we're not.
What do you mean?
I had the same issue. I had the same issue having to explain hair pomade to a white person.
All you had to do was look that on Google. See, that's what I'm talking about, laziness. Come on now.
Yes. Yeah, and why does it always go back to hair? The whole your characters are in the show. They're never washing their hair because my hair will fall out my head if I wash it every day. Are you for real?
Oh, God. Oh, the intricacies of it is anyway.
I think I sent the person a picture of Vajara Dax.
I can't. I cannot.
But you know, I'm a jerk. You know, it's what it is.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
I still don't understand, Steve. Oh, fuck.
See, an example of that is when I was editing Sycorax's Daughters some years ago, I think 2017 or something, with the two professors. And when we put the book together, when it went to publishers, and again, it's the Virgo, I can't help myself. I gave them a list. I said, these are not misspelled, nor are they. Do not correct these words. And there were a lot of them, by the way. Because people were writing from like Jamaican point of views or down south point of views. I was like, yeah, here's the table. What do you when you
this is
have
the
like,
lexicon. This is the language. That's what it is.
Correct them.
Oh, it wasn't.
I love it.
It wasn't too long ago that I was fighting editors about capitalizing the B in Black. And that was a big deal.
Wow.
They would, every time they would go through and they'd cross it out and put the small b, and I'd put the big B right the hell back. Don't you touch that. You know,
leave it alone.
You know, and finally the Chicago Manual Style caught up to us, and that's just been what, 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's very recent.
I know the pandemic was in effect when it happened, so it wasn't that long ago. You know?
And I'm black, y'all. And I'm black, y'all. And I'm bliggity, 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 black, y'all.
Black. I might be light skinned, and that's not my fault because y'all came to the reservation.
Oh, hey now.
Jumped in my gene pool. That's my line. Oh, I'm not dark enough. That's not my fault because y'all came to the plantation and partied and jumped into my DN pool. So DNA.
It's wow. You see, and this is why I have my friends on, and I knew it would go this way anyway. So listen, One more question I think we have, and this one's a fairly easy one. Like that first one about should we be speaking about African American horror? I mean, it was an easy lob. This is an easy close. Advice to young African American authors. Let's give them something, because I don't know that we've been negative. We've been real here, right? So I can't say that's negative or positive. It's just legitimately the truth of what's going on. Let's give them something to aspire to, because we have been working, all of us have been working for decades at this point. Not to age anybody on here, but it's the fact. And you know, let them learn from your knowledge of what you've done. What did you say, Linda?
I said, you know, I don't care telling my age because I still look good, whatever.
But you know me, I'm not there yet. I'm always like, no, I'm not talking about my age yet. A couple more years, I'll be all right. But, you know, give us something. Everybody give some sort of you know, just what would you tell a young African-American horror writer who wants to, you know, break in but can't figure out how?
Okay, I'll do this. Your stuff's gonna get critiqued. Put your ego aside and learn from it.
That's good.
Oh, very good. Yes, that's nice. Yeah, I would say pay very much attention to and not in deference to or kissing the ring of, but pay attention to those that came before you, understand what they have done, how they've done it, and embrace the fact that while there's room for your voice, that we are all a part of a collective that could work together.
Nice.
I think I would say to resist that urge for the immediate gratification and take the time to learn the craft. Take the time to become the best writer you can be, and don't rush right out there and just say, hey, I got this idea, I'm gonna self-publish it and not have an editor look at it, not have anybody look at it, and just put it out there and promote the hell out of it, because you're doing all of us a disservice when you do that. Put your best foot forward, slow your ass down, and learn the craft. Learn the craft.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I can add anything to what everyone else has said, because that is like, I do mentor writers, and I'm always saying the same thing, no matter what shade your skin is. Good writing, you know, study, you know, and in particular, you know, yes, if you're a Black writer in horror, it's a good thing to read other Black writers who have published before. And also not to feel like, as we had talked about here, that you have to do anything any kind of way. What you have to do is write what's coming to you and write it. And part of it is the business of looking for markets. You know, you got to be out there too, looking for markets. I mean, as much as we talk about editors and publishers being lazy in trying to look for things, you also have to look for markets. And what I did in the beginning, I collected a lot of rejections. I was doing the best I could. Send your stuff when you got it as good as you can. You've had it edited. Don't let it stop you that you're sending it to a market that you don't think will pick it because you're Black. I send my stuff. I can get rejected. Like, I'm just sending it everywhere.
Yeah, don't
self-reject. Don't be held back by your own sense because you don't think that they will publish you because you're Black. Send it anyway. Heck.
Yeah.
You guys, thank you so much. As expected, a wonderful conversation. But what I hope people get from this is that, you know, there's no one right way to do it, but we all do run into some things that are, it's like a collective experience, regardless of how we approach it. So this is just, you know, this is two things. It was a knowledge drop. It was also a conversation among people who were, you know, respect each other's work and have been doing this for quite some time and have, you know, have the interest to have a conversation that can benefit other people. So before we go, please tell us how we can find you and what your most recent release is. Linda, you're my top one again.
Okay. I also want to say thank you, Lisa, for putting this together and moderating it so beautifully. You can find me on my site is Linda Addison Writer, all together. The latest thing, oh, geez. I'm in a lot of anthologies these days, right? So go to my site and look. I'm sorry.
You have a lot going on.
I'll come back.
Just go see Linda's site. There'll be, 75,000 things to pick from. Okay. All right, Rhonda, you're next on the list.
Okay, so I finally have a website. I think last time I did one of these, I did not have a website. I have a website.
What?
It is RhondaJacksonJoseph.com. Yes, I know, right? I caved. And the next thing, I'm gonna be at Ghoulish Fest in March. I'm super excited to be one of the guests of honors. It's right here in Texas. I mean, like, y'all come through. That's really exciting. So it's gonna be a whole party.
Awesome. Wrath, you're next on my list.
All right. So I too, finally, after 20 plus years, have a website, wrathjwhorror.com. And there's only one book on there right now, and that's my latest recent release, and that's Rabbit Hunt. For everything else, just throw my name into Amazon.
Yep. And just be careful. Just
that.
read the description. All I'm saying. You make I sweat, my eyes leak. It's just, anyway, good stuff, but holy cow. Anyway. Steven.
Okay. So for the record, I've been had a website, but the latest, if I could get this out without a whole bunch of things falling off my desk. Okay, so the latest thing I did is this. It is called SVP's Little Black Book of Terror. It is an anthology that I decided to curate. The proceeds go to a suicide prevention organization called SAVE. Of course, as you may have gathered from earlier parts of the conversation, I also have a vampire series. I have a serial killer series. I have a series that I've cultivated with my podcast friends, Mark Abbott, Kirk Johnson, Denise Tapscott. And the podcast is Beef, Wine, and Shenanigans. The two books that we have right now in that particular sleeve are Hell at the Way Station and Hell at Brooklyn T. There is a third installment in which Denise will be a part of. And all of that, along with Black history animations and a bunch of other stuff I've done over the years, can be found at www.laughingblackvampire.com.
All right, I'm Elmarie Wood. I have a website. I too have had one forever, but anyway, elmariewood.com. Check me out. All right, thanks, my friends. Thank you so much. I had a great time having this conversation with you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.